The 1999 Gothic horror film Sleepy Hollow is a critically acclaimed retelling of the classic story by Washington Irving. The film was loosely based on the original short story, turning it from a supernatural ghost tale and into a police procedural with Ichabod Crane investigating into the mystery of the Headless Horseman. Sleepy Hollow was a box office success, but criticized for its use of violence. However, it is more than just a gory horror thriller. It charters Ichabod Crane's transition from a man of science who shows rigid skepticism towards spiritual and supernatural explanations of the unknown, and into a follower of the occult, as Ichabod accepts and relies on magic and witchcraft as his only means of stopping the Headless Horseman. A notable aspect of the film is the fact that it takes place during the turn of the century, during the year 1799. Interestingly, the film had its premiere on November 17, 1999, coinciding with the time period in the film by 2 centuries. The date in the film being clearly symbolic of leaving behind an old era that has relied on outdated modes of thinking and into the new era defined by reason and science for improving society. At the end of the film, Ichabod Crane announces such an intellectual transition with great enthusiasm, despite the fact he already embraced occultic practices, in order to defeat the Headless Horseman, contradicting his own beliefs for the new age. And so with this parallel between the film's release date and the year in the film's story, I think the film seems to communicate the theme how modern society is presented to us as a product of rationalism and science, but beneath the surface of this lies the actual reality of magic and occultism which is being practiced, and how these occultic practices, what are rumored to take place in the elite spheres of academia, politics, and governing institutions, are kept obscured in the public eye from members in these spheres by championing movements for science, to obscure the fact that occultism, and perhaps Satanism, is what really drives contemporary society, and not just secularism and science as we're led to believe. For providing context to this theory, check out this interview with Christopher Lee when he discusses the occult and those who practice it.
It's a great attempt, I think.
Do you regard black magic as being purely fictitious, or is there some truth in it?
Some truth. 100% truth. There is nothing fictitious about black magic, in any way whatever. It is a fact. It is a fact which has existed for several thousand years. I mean, when we talk about black magic, we are talking about Satanism, necromancy, alchemy, witchcraft, the worship of Satan, the worship of dark forces, whether it's voodoo, juju, whether it's something practiced in the Western world or the Eastern world, whether it's easily defined or not easily defined, the order of the left-hand path, the following of this, the following of that. It is basically the worship of the force of evil as embodied by Satan, Lucifer, the princes of darkness and their legions and so on. I think it's a form of escapism. It's the fact that in this day and age we do live in a somewhat disagreeable world in many respects that I don't have to even talk about. Everybody knows this is a fact. And people are constantly seeking for a way out, whether it's to gratify their own desires or whether it's to find a way out of their own loneliness, or whether it is looking for power or physical indulgence or whatever you like to call it. I think it's always this question of people looking for a road out, an exit, an escape, some form of safety valve which will help them to blow off steam. They don't realize how dangerous it is to get involved in this respect, because inevitably they start at a lower level and then they get absolutely under the control of the bosses, because the bosses exist. They have the same rank.
Furthermore, Johnny Depp is long believed to be involved in Satanism and the occult, especially for having starred in the Marilyn Manson music video Say 10. So as we examine Sleepy Hollow, we find Christopher Lee plays a magistrate who sends Ichabod Crane to Sleepy Hollow to investigate the decapitations that are happening there, challenging Ichabod's faith in science and reason. At one point, Christopher Lee further mentions to Ichabod that he is being put to the test, pointing accusatorily at him as if it were also telling Johnny Depp that he's being put to the test to practice dark magic during the course of the film. And if you notice, directly behind Christopher Lee's shoulders are the wings of an eagle, particularly the bald eagle that represents justice. It makes Christopher Lee look like an angel. I think this could be a reference to Azrael, the angel of death, for Azrael also teaches mankind the difference between truth and illusion. That Christopher Lee is representative for Azrael is supported when we are shown a shot of a page from Ichabod's notebook. We can see the image of angel wings with a hand gesturing towards the word truth. This truth perhaps refers to the actual reality of what Ichabod is supposed to come to realize from being sent on his investigation by Christopher Lee, the truth as to what his faith in science and rationalism reveals to him. For additionally, we can see another hand below the word truth that is holding a chemist's test tube, and also beneath truth is what looks like a microscope. These images seem to foreshadow the forensic techniques Ichabod Crane uses when examining the corpses of the decapitated victims, techniques that do not reveal the truth behind the mystery that Ichabod is set out to solve, but only obscures cipher what he's supposed to see, and that is the fact the killer he is after is not a man, but in fact a supernatural figure who is the Headless Horseman. The blurring between the lines as to what Ichabod wants to see from what he is supposed to see applies to us as well, the audience, and that we're supposed to see the falsity of science and rationalism but the truth of occultic practice, what is subtly intertied with Satanism in the film. When it is hinted at earlier when Ichabod arrives to the manor of the Van Tassels, we can see there is a door knocker that looks like a bull's head which Ichabod knocks the door with. The bull's head is usually associated with Satan. It is as if Johnny Depp is being allowed access into this realm of the occult, as if it were more of an initiation than the Halloween party we're seeing. For Katrina, the love interest of Ichabod, who plays a game while pretending to be a witch, is blindfolded when she selects Ichabod to greet him with a kiss. Some groups, as the Freemasons, conduct initiation rites that involve blindfolds. Plus, we can also see Christina Ricci is wearing a necklace, which she wears often in the film, and on this necklace is the pentagram, a symbol connected to Satanism.
Are you saying... Is that what you believe?
Seeing is believing.
And interestingly, this distinction that is made between what is truth and illusion is even explicitly mentioned by Ichabod himself when he shows Christina Ricci's character the optical illusion toy, called a thaumatrope, what has the image of the cardinal.
Cardinal on one side, an empty cage. And now...
You can do magic. Teach me.
It is no magic. It is what we call optics. Separate pictures which become one in the spinning. It is truth, but truth is not always appearance.
Early on in the film, we see Ichabod freeing a cardinal from his cage. Cardinals are usually symbolic for freedom, wisdom, and divine knowledge. This use of the cardinal throughout the film might be interpreted as symbolic for Ichabod's spiritual journey in freeing himself from the past traumas of his childhood after witnessing the death of his mother. However, in Sleepy Hollow, all the red cardinals seen in the film are fake, as the production crew could not find any, and according to Tim Burton, they had actually tried to pass off a dyed pigeon they had dyed red, and the hardest thing on the whole film was to get a cardinal. In addition, the forests in the film are also fake backgrounds built on sound stages, while the fake forests later became real when they grew infested with insects and birds, meaning some of the sounds of the birds in the film are real and provide the only authenticity to the woods. So with this interplay between illusion and truth, which Ichabod Crane, as well as for Johnny Depp himself, confronts in Sleepy Hollow, is intended as what this actual test is that he has to face, a test that involves Ichabod coming to the acceptance of the occult, which could be considered conjuring up between that what is real and what is not, that as expressed through acts of magic and witchcraft. And with the film's construction of its set designs being obviously unreal, it seems to accentuate how filmmaking itself is a form of magic, with this line between real and fake being accentuated during the dream sequences Ichabod has of his mother. And the first dream scene even occurs following when Ichabod is attacked by Brahm, who poses as a headless horseman, and thus what is a fake headless horseman who tries to scare him. So the scene with Brahm, while a reference to the animated feature that Disney produced, is also revealing regarding what happens to Johnny Depp himself throughout the film, which is that he is chased by someone who is pretending to play the Headless Horseman. Also, before Ichabod Crane enters Sleepy Hollow, we see that he passes through a gate with statues of deer heads on the sides. In classic mythology, deer are said to choose humans for entering in the woods, and also entering the land of the fairies. Following the deer can also be a way into the otherworld, or a sign that one could be coming close to its borders. A reference to the otherworld, or in the case for Sleepy Hollow, the underworld, is pointed out by Magistrate Phillips. Magistrate Phillips explains to Ichabod his talisman that he wears is to protect himself from the horsemen. What Magistrate Phillips wears is the Ankh, which is used in Egyptian art and writing to represent the term for life. It was also given to pharaohs as emblematic of their power to revive souls in the afterlife. The Ankh can be used as a talisman for good fortune. It can also be associated with the Christian cross. But what is most particular to note is that it can be symbolic for esoteric knowledge. However, Ichabod dismisses Magistrate Philip's talisman for believing in such nonsense. And of course, in order to defeat the horseman, Ichabod realizes he must restore his head, which is his skull. Thus, Ichabod uses the skull, which is a common symbol not just for death, but also divine knowledge and wisdom, in order to resurrect life. What is further interesting to note in Sleepy Hollow is the fact Ichabod is seen throughout the film rejecting Christianity and resorting instead to witchcraft during his investigation. For early in the film, when he is meeting with the townsmen of Sleepy Hollow, Ichabod is thrown a Bible by his side, and told that it is his best resource against the Headless Horseman. Ichabod briefly looks into the Bible to find the Van Garrett family tree, which does not provide clues to solving the mystery, but obscures Ichabod's understanding of the truth that the perpetrator of the crimes is Lady Van Tassel, whose own heritage is not recognized in the Van Tassel's family line. We can even see Ichabod pressing down his notebook on the Bible he is given, as if he were repressing the memory of what the Bible means to him. For this scene with a Bible being thrown at him is later paralleled during the flashbacks dream sequence which Ichabod has of his father condemning his mother for practicing witchcraft. And then there is a later shot of Ichabod dreaming of his father walking past him after having killed his mother. We see that his father looks headless as he walks past him, suggesting Ichabod associates the villainous headless horseman with his father. So from these particular scenes, it is implied Ichabod holds a repressed resentment towards Christianity in general. So Ichabod instead resorts to witchcraft for conducting his investigations, consulting the sister of Lady Van Tassel, both of whom are witches, while the love interest Ichabod has with Katrina also gives support to the fact Ichabod is being seduced by witchcraft and strengthens his belief it is real.
Katrina, I might have killed you. Why have you come?
Because no one else would go with you.
Well, I am now twice the man. It is your white magic.
Of course, Ichabod initially shows doubts towards the veracity of sorcery and occultism in the film, but nevertheless his view changes dramatically throughout the film from skepticism to greater conviction. He comes to be convinced witchcraft is in fact real and he should be wary of its power. It is interesting to point out how Ichabod's trauma as a child is closely associated with the practice of blood ritual that is used in witchcraft, the blood ritual that Lady Van Tassel being similar to the one that her sister practices when helping Ichabod locate the burial grounds of the Headless Horseman. Before leaving Sleepy Hollow, Ichabod pitches his notebook in the fire, tossing away what seems symbolic of his memories of his mother. When considering, he often remembers of his mother drawing occultic symbols by the fireplace, which Katrina was also doing. Of course, it is apparent Ichabod is putting aside his staunch belief in science and rationalism, submitting to the belief in occultism. Ichabod assumes it is Katrina who brought back the Headless Horseman using witchcraft, but does not convict her of the crimes out of love for her, a love that he seems to associate with his mother. At one moment, Ichabod even looks at the book of magic that Katrina gave him, as if he was going to throw it away as well, but he instead decides to keep it. Then after seeing the cut on the corpse of the body presumed to be Lady Van Tassel as he leaves Sleepy Hollow, Ichabod seems to be reminded of his own scar on his hand while twirling the optical illusion toy his mother gave him. Ichabod realizes his own perception for what he thought he knew of the consequences that are brought from practicing witchcraft, thence explaining his aversion towards occultism, as both for his mother and Katrina were wrong. As it is the book of magic his love interest Katrina gave him that leads Ichabod in both solving the mystery of the Headless Horseman as much as protecting himself from harm later on. Thus, at the end of the film, Ichabod fully embraces the power of the occult, hence becoming a follower of the witchcraft and sorcery he originally passed off as hokum, fulfilling the real test that Christopher Lee had sent him on his journey to complete from the very beginning. So now I'd like to hear your comments on what you think about the film and what your thoughts are about occultism, and whether there are people in elite circles of our society that might be involved in satanic worship and that it seems more prevalent in our society than we realize. So thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel if you'd like to keep up on my film analyses.